about, or you are maybe not sure if that is the direction you see yourself heading in. Yeah, and I just think like to end that with the times that we're facing and the environmental space, I think it's really good to be flexible and there's always something that you can learn and bring to your next opportunity. So
Great points. I think I would say like, this has already been touched on, but just emphasize connections. Like I truly didn't realize how many connections, big and small, like the people that I met along the way as a student would then become relevant, like so relevant in my life years later. And I can say this as someone who's a little older. Like it's still surprising to me. Like, people that I worked with on like one of my first field site visits doing research as like a sophomore in college, like are my coworkers now. And it's just these connections that you don't think, like you don't give it much thought in the moment, but they really become like, especially if you stay in the area in Virginia, even up in Northern Virginia, they really become relevant. And it's not that I would do anything differently, but I wish I had realized then, wow, if I have, stay extra to talk to this person or pick their brain a little bit, like it really becomes useful and you never know what doors that will open for you. I would also probably tell myself to like chill out a tiny bit, just a tiny bit, not a ton, but like so much pressure and like great points with these two have already said how, you know, I always worried like in my first few jobs, or even picking grad school, like, am I gonna pigeonhole myself? If I pick this one thing, does that mean I can't pivot? Or like I have this internship and I don't really like it and like I'm terrified. Like you can always pivot, you can always try something new. So just echo what they said. Like any experience is a good experience. I think that's really good advice, especially for being in school and thinking about the first year or two of your career.
Yeah, not to sound like a broken record, but the William and Mary network is truly insane. And it's not something you'll appreciate until you're gone. Um, Maddie and I both live in New York City, and at separate times, we've been looking for jobs. We have a lot of friends who, over the past 3 years, have looked for new jobs. And it honestly feels like you have an army of people rooting for you, trying to push your name along. And, that's the hardest part. Like, once you've applied for a job, you're in the interview process, you guys are all qualified. Like you're gonna bring it home at that point. But just being able to get recognized through like stacks and stacks of different people, having someone who knows that you went to William and Mary, maybe knows you personally or not, is so incredibly helpful. I have so many times reached out just to people on LinkedIn that I don't even know, but saw that they also were a graduate, have asked to talk to them, pick their brain. Maybe it related to a role I was interested in, maybe not. I don't think I've had an example of that where someone hasn't agreed to meet and talk. So everyone is just like incredibly willing to help. I personally would love to help anyone who has any questions regarding anything similar to what I'm doing or at my company. It's like, I don't know, it's obviously not the biggest school, but I think in some ways that makes it like a stronger desire to look out for each other. And it really is special. And like so many people said, like, will for years to come just be something that you value. The only thing I would add to that is kind of similar to what I said about reaching out to people on LinkedIn. I would definitely recommend talking to people maybe in positions that you think you might want. I think it's really hard to like know what a job is going to be like, even from a description or even from interviewing, unless you're able to like talk to someone on a team. And people usually love to tell you what they do. Like, people like to talk about themselves. And I think not only is it helpful for you, but it like shows that you have a serious interest in it. Hopefully they'll have your back later down the line or in a more immediate circumstance. But yeah, just like not being afraid to reach out, whether it's over LinkedIn or email. You can usually like guess someone's corporate email. There are like a couple websites you can look them up, but even just cold emailing them, people are usually open to talking about it. And I think it's the best way to like have some insight into maybe the careers that you're interested in. Um, that's all I got.
Yeah, I think it's super important to build your network within the environmental sciences. But I would also recommend, especially now when this field is kind of in flux and it can be really just like, unpredictable. There's so much uncertainty. Just building your network outside of environmental science too, whether that's through, I don't know, like recreational activity or local organizations. That's something I've focused more on during my graduate studies, and I think it's really given me a sense of stability here. So for me, that I joined the rowing team in my town. And I kind of wish I had invested more time into something like that in undergrad. But I was just like really academically focused. So I think have like just having balance, especially in the current climate, is super important.
I think the advice I would give to undergrad students would be kind of finding your niche or like the area that you are passionate of sustainability or environmental science. Because I remember when I was applying for jobs, I was like, I'm passionate about sustainability. And then the answer would be like, about what? Because there are so many things you can do within this space. Like I know some of the people in the room are doing more of the public sector and like grants and like what me and Katie do are a little bit different with corporate sustainability. So I think find the area that you think that you are able to make a difference in, and that's where you want to focus on. I think is really good that you can make an elevator pitch off of that. Like, I want to work in corporate sustainability because I'm passionate about, fighting climate change. So then you have like a reasoning and like Katie had mentioned the why. And another thing I would say is also again like leveraging that network of like William and Mary people, like and also finding a mentor again, someone that you could talk to. Like, I have an interview tomorrow. I'm so nervous for this. What should I do? What and just having someone to bounce ideas and just kind of calm your nerves or talk through things when you have even things going on in your work. You're like, oh, my manager's being so annoying today. Who can I talk to about this? And they can like listen to you and be like, oh, I've been there. Here's how I'll deal with it. So I think that is definitely good advice.
Can I say one more?
Yes.
I'm not sure if other people will agree with me, but if you are on the fence about going to grad school, like right after graduating, and if you find a program that will pay you to go, you should go. That's my advice.
Awesome. Okay, we're gonna do a Q&A. So we can hear any questions from the crowd. You can have something specific in mind if like their field aligns with the question, or you can just ask broadly and someone can grab the question. So, you guys, does anyone have any questions? Yeah.
I was wondering what classes you took here that helped you with your writing skills.
Yes. So every time I had, and this really was only possible, like I think my junior, maybe end of sophomore through end of graduating, I took an English class every semester. That was a little bit just because like I needed a break. Like I was taking all like biology classes and I needed like someone to speak in human language to me. Couldn't like do science anymore, but so helpful. I really enjoyed it. William Mary has an excellent English department. I loved it. So maybe try English classes. It's really fun too.
I will say, I think Emily, I think you mentioned this earlier, but yeah, we both took a science communication class, and I will definitely say that, I mean, I like was very much, I had a self-design major, but was very much in like the social science world. And I think a lot of my like sociology, just like all of my social science classes, I think prepared me really well for the work that I do now in like the public sector. But I think particularly my science communication class, in an ever-changing environment, in this field, I think though thinking about the different ways to frame issues and the different ways to present a topic to a given audience is really important. And I think that was something that we talked about a lot in that class. And I think you can make, like if I, like for me in food waste work, you can make a lot of different arguments of why food waste is important, depending on who you're talking to. And you can frame that issue in a lot of different ways. And I think like having the like cognizance to be able to think about like the audience you're presenting something to, or like what you maybe are or are not allowed to say in certain settings. It's really important, and like having a way to get your message across while working in the constraints in a complex field at the moment, which a field like I think always probably going to be complex in some ways, is really important. And so science communication was super helpful with that. It's a great class. Yeah, I also took that class, super helpful. I think one of the other classes that comes to mind I took in environmental economics class. That was super helpful. We had to write memos and incorporate some economic literature, and I've used that as a writing sample, and that's been super helpful. But I think the one other thing that comes to mind is the ENSP department is so interdisciplinary. So there were so many classes I took that were cross-listed that had me writing, about not only environmental issues, but like maybe history or like maybe English. And I think just knowing how to kind of combine environmental issues with other issues is so important for just a variety of jobs in the field.
Anyone on Zoom want to answer that, or we can also get another question? Okay. Do we have another question?
What does a typical day in your work look
like? Sorry. So I work on like a grant program, and so my job is like specifically related to the grant that I work on. So it funded like the grant program I run, and then also my position. So I do everything related to that specific project under the grant. And so it can look like a lot of different things, which I think has been really interesting. We just released our like grant application. And so for a while, a lot of my job was like developing the grant application and like the processes for people to apply for the grant. Prior to that, a lot of my job was focused on writing a report on the state of food waste. And so I spent like a few months talking about writing skills. I spent a few months writing like a 50-page report on the state of food waste and researching that document and like meeting with stakeholders. So I would say that at least in my role, it pivots depending on like the period of the project we're on. At some point, I'll be doing like site visits to all of the grant projects that we fund. There's also like a significant portion of my job that is involved, at least right now, in like reporting standards and like creating reporting standards that we can send back to EPA about like how to calculate data and like actually measure our progress and all the things we're doing. I don't think that like every job will have that much variety, but I think that was something that I really looked at when I was like applying to different roles and having the ability to like see a project through to the end. Something that was really cool to me, especially early on in my career. It's fun to be able to like work on different stages of a project. So different day to day, but I'm like working on the same thing through, which has been really
fun. Yeah. So I also work at DEQ with Sydney, but we're in different programs. So I'm in the Coastal Zone Management Program, and the crux of our program is Virginia receives a bucket of money from FOA, and our job is to basically reallocate most of that, like 90% of that federal money through the state to different sub-recipients, and it's all coastal zone management projects. So we fund anything from like direct on the ground oyster restoration, we fund land conservation, we fund localities to do like coastal resilience planning. And one of the things I love about this current job is that, mainly I'm like a project manager, right? I manage some of these sub-awards. So like Sydney said, like a lot of public sector work is pretty grant focused, but I love it because one day I'm like doing a site visit, counting oysters in the field for an oyster restoration project, where the next day, we could be meeting with local government staff about what their needs are for a certain training. And so I really enjoy the part of my job that is getting to have, like all 10 fingers in different little projects, and it keeps me refreshed and focused, really interesting. That's a great question though, because like, especially in our field, day-to-day can look really different. Like when I worked at VIMS for a year, I was in the field almost every single day. And like, that was super, super fun for like 1 year. And I was like, okay, I'm a little tired and like my back hurts every day. Maybe I could sit for a few years. So, great thing to think about. Lots of dynamic options in this field, but I love how the current job I have, I get to work on a bunch of different projects at once. It's really fun.
A current day for me, uh, typically I spend a lot of time researching various clients in kind of like what we consider environmentally and social heightened industries. So like oil and gas, mining, recently like data centers is a big one. Any clients in industries like those that we're financing, I'm doing a lot of background research into how they compare to industry competitors, what kind of operator they are, what their health and safety track record is, if they've had any major pollution incidents or spills, um, if they have suppliers connected to, like, let's say, forced labor in China, which is pretty frequent, something we see with like solar panels. So I'm doing a lot of that background research and then kind of preparing like a brief for our banking team to explain what some of those risks are, why that's relevant to us, and usually like what some mitigating factors are that can help us either get comfortable with the deal or maybe move towards the direction of like this is something that doesn't really align with our stakeholders' values and might not be something we want to finance. That might sound boring, but I've really enjoyed it. It's not something I really ever expected I would be doing, but it's exciting just in the sense that I didn't really know like the finance world before this, and I feel like I've yes, gotten to learn a lot more about environmental and social risks, but also how it applies in the context of financial institutions. So that would be a typical day for me.
So since I'm graduating in December, my days lately involve a lot of writing, more writing and more writing. Um, but before this, during normal semester, I my schedule is kind of balanced between TA work. So I'm a teaching assistant for field courses that are place-based. So we travel to different spots in upstate New York. And for that, I was doing a lot of course logistics, so setting up vans, food, um, giving lectures, coordinating guest speakers, different scientists, artists, indigenous community members. We try to involve people from many different fields. And yeah, coursework and then my research. So lots of literature review, writing, surveys, and interviews. But it's been incredibly dynamic and every day is very different. Spend a lot of time outside, which I'm really grateful for.
So yeah, my typical day at the sustainability office at BNY like definitely differs. So I focus a lot on re reg reporting for BNY as well as like our sustainability strategy internally. And so when I say like reg reporting, like right now, we're getting ready to publish our sustainability report that is like, I don't know, something at 80 pages. And you work with a lot of stakeholders because a lot of companies, sustainability isn't just like your environmental footprint, it's a lot of like your social, a lot of your philanthropy, your volunteering. So we work with a lot of different people to talk about, it appropriately and get the right numbers down and be accurate. And when also with our sustainability strategy internally, we work with other stakeholders at the bank to kind of find out how we can embed sustainability into their lives. So, for example, we work with our procurement supply chain team to add on ESG due diligence with all our supplier vendors. Like kind of Katie was saying about how she looks at environmental and social risk of clients. We do this with, our vendors and helping them with the process and like the technology. And it definitely differs and it is exciting to work on all these different projects and like own something, all the way through and be like, wow, I got to see it from start to finish and also with the projects as well and gain, connections with people outside of sustainability. But a lot of it is like kind of learning to work with people outside of my own sustainability team and, communicate sustainability effectively and why it matters and everything like that.
Awesome.
I'm Davey. Thank you guys all for coming here. Thank you for your time. I'm an environmental science and finance major, so this one might be geared more towards Madeline and Katie. but how do you guys see, or how does your deep understanding of the hard science with your geology and environmental science majors, how does that come into your work? And like, is that factored as to like the persuasion at all, or is it really just that you get to understand what's going on and you can communicate like your takeaways?
Great question. Um, I think from my perspective, it definitely matters. And like at William and Mary, we were lucky because even if you are environmental science, like you said, you're ENS and finance, um, like super interdisciplinary already. I think I don't use like my hard skills. I studied structural geology majority of my time at William and Mary. I'm not using that on a daily basis, but it was more like a practice run of like how to dive into an intense learning experience in one subject. And I think all of the skills that I learned throughout that are transferable in so many different instances. I think like for the job like application and interview process, being able to talk about those hard skills is super important and people will love it. While it might not be as relevant to like at least kind of the work that Maddie and I do on a day-to-day basis. But Maddie, I'll let you answer. You might have a different perspective than me on that.
Yeah, I was gonna say I feel like I'm not using the hard skills that I was doing in class, in the business school, but I was doing a lot of projects and working with teammates. But I will say I do feel like you have to have a good understanding of your environmental systems, like waste and greenhouse gases to talk about it smart and effective when you're like in a financial area. So you're like, oh, she really knows what she's talking about when she talks about greenhouse gas emissions. And knowing the background behind it is good. And I think also kind of finding the area within, environmental and finance that you want to work in, because I know a lot of it is like finance emissions. You look at your greenhouse gas emissions of that, or you can do super quantitative climate modeling. If you have experience in that, I know that's a growing field as well. But I think it's just kind of talking about it and just knowing your stuff when you're like in that kind of finance setting when you're talking to people who don't know about sustainability.
Yeah, and I think for both of us, like we've experienced kind of being like the industry person in your team or in your field is a little bit weird, especially when you're like the youngest analyst on the team. So it can put you in like a cool opportunity and give you a lot of unique experiences. But I do think sometimes in similar jobs, like they're expecting you to know what to do or like to have an opinion on it. And yeah, William and Mary will definitely give you that background to succeed in that type of environment.
Thank you.
Do you have any other questions? I actually have one question before we finish. Do you guys have like a specific piece of advice when it comes to interviewing for jobs or applying to like let's say a master's program that like would make you stand out, or like something specific to environmental or like
This is not specific to this field, but my piece of interview advice, which has worked for me every time, is like tell them that you really want the job. Like I think that I don't know. I think that people who are interviewing like talk to a lot of people, and I think that they want to hire somebody that wants to be there. And if there's two candidates on paper and both are super qualified, but you come in with energy and you really express like I want to be here and here's why, and here's why I think I'm going to do a good job. Like I have had a lot of success with that in interviews, and I don't think I'm necessarily like a crazy standout candidate beyond the other people that are applying. I think it just like goes to that connection. They want to hire somebody that wants to be there.
Yeah, I have something. I think sometimes before an interview, I will practice with like a family member or a friend that maybe doesn't know as much about the environmental field, and I will practice explaining what I have done in some of my past opportunities, because if you can explain in a way really like efficiently and in a way that makes sense to someone that is maybe not as familiar with some of the terms you've like gotten really comfortable with. I think that can be a really good method of coming off as really like clear and precise in an interview. I think this is like very basic, but like know the job you're applying for, like really read the job description and like research the people that you are interviewing with and like have an understanding of what they do for their roles. And then I think like as we were like talking about like applying your experiences, especially like right as you are going in out of college, don't think that your college experiences are like less legitimate or like not things that you can talk about because they were your college experiences. Like that's where you're going off of. Those are things that you have done and got involved in. But I have never been in a job interview where I've not been asked to like explain a project I carried through to the end or like how I solve a problem. Like those are all very like basic job interview questions. And so you should have a go-to example of how to talk about something. And if that example can relate to the role that you're applying for, even better. But even if not, just like have confidence in your experiences and how your experience relates to the role. You should think about that before you go in. I think that's really like that's a pretty basic like job interview tip, but having those things ahead of time so that when you're put on the spot, you're not like, oh my gosh, how can I relate this in? Like practice with someone, practice how you're going to relate your experiences, and like have a fallback example of like a project you were really invested in or like a topic you really care about. Like have a fallback so that if you do get in a bind or a moment where you're like, oh my gosh, what do I talk about? You have something to go back on.
This is like more personal and less like career focused, but you guys kind of were alluding to the fact that it's like a challenging time in this like field. How do you stay like energized and like personally like motivated to keep going in like a time when there are challenges to be faced?
Yeah. I can go ahead. I like for context, I work in state, but I work under a federal grant. And I started at DEQ like 2 weeks before inauguration. And then there was just like chaos for a long time. And there was just a lot of uncertainty. And like that, I think, at least all of us right here, like I think that is something we've all dealt with pretty directly. But I think that something that has kept me motivated, and like this kind of goes back to like what I was talking about, like reframing the way you talk about issues and like the way that you can like approach something, I think has been really helpful. I feel very lucky to like have a job I really like right now. And it like certainly there are times when you're sitting there and you're like, oh my gosh, that's a little bit disastrous. But I think that if you can find a niche to like keep moving forward and like you can be okay with adapting and like maybe like the project isn't moving forward in the exact way that you wanted it to because there are certain constraints that are out of your control. Those are out of your control. And so like do your best with rolling with the punches and like pivoting when you need to. And like think about like different ways that you can reframe environmental issues so that you can get more people on board. Like the like really harsh climate messaging like isn't the hottest topic right now. And so like how can you reframe like food waste to be a topic about food insecurity and like getting people who don't have access to food. Like why are we throwing away food when there are tons of people who are hungry? That has been a really useful message in light of other things. So I think like it is tough, but I think like finding ways to like move forward or like reframe or like be grateful that you get to work in this space can be helpful. But it's for sure crazy.
It's a crazy time. And like Sydney and I, I also like work at the state, but am federally supported. And it is, it's tough, but like small wins, like, my boss has been really encouraging and saying to us, like, a lot of this is just like, yes, there are some very, very real implications for what's going on right now, but some of it is just like distraction and noise. And like, we still have to show up and like, let's get the work done. Like, let's not pause our work for the next X number of years because we're scared. Like, that would be a waste of years. So like, let's do what we can, like put our feet on the ground, like get as much work done as we can. And I would also say like, if you're interested in public sector, things are changing all the time. Virginia has a governor election in like a week and a half, like that can be hugely, like it either way, it will have huge implications for us at the state level. And like it's something to look potentially either way, potentially look forward to. Like, we'll see where it's exciting, it's fresh. So like there are ways, at any level of government or even in fluctuating like political or even social opinions about these topics. Like small wins, keep working, do what you can, and be excited for the next change because they just will not stop.
Yeah. I'm just gonna round out the public sector. Yeah. But yeah, working in the federal government, a lot of people have left, and at some point, like the work is always going to be important, and they're going to need not only new people but also younger people and people that are really energized and really excited to be in this space. And I think you just have to know that that's going to come at some point and spend time if that's where you're hoping to be, gaining experience in other fields and areas that you can eventually bring back. But there will be, more jobs and positions and stuff, and there will definitely be a need. So that's what people told me.
I guess for me, I think working in the private sector is to have like a global perspective because I'm fortunate that I feel like at my company, because we operate globally, like in Europe and in Asia and Australia, like a lot of these countries are moving so fast and forward, and that sustainability is still important to them. They still want us to report on it. So even though it might seem like in the US we're taking a step back, if you're operating at a company that has a global operations, they have to move forward to like kind of appease both parties. So I think that's been beneficial. But I think also maybe people are talking about sustainability less in the corporate setting, but no one's stopping what they're doing because, they have all these things that they have to keep moving. They have to keep moving towards their 2030, 2050 goals. They might be talking about it less, but behind the scenes, it's still going on to, meet their client expectations, meet these global like expectations. But I am fortunate and glad to know that it's still like kind of moving forward.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think also like surrounding yourself with thought leaders in this space, if you can, is very helpful. In New York, we have Climate Week, which is like a huge event kind of timed up at the same time as the UN General Assembly. So there are just a ton of people from all over the world. Companies host all kinds of climate-based focused events. There are so many panels with like just incredible speakers, and it's basically all free. I think most major cities have like a similar Climate Week type of thing, but I know for me that was a month or two ago, and I think it really reinvigorated myself as well as my team in a time where like we were just feeling a little bit beat down. But as Maddie said, especially the global perspective, things ebb and flow, but like we are going to continue moving forward and hopefully better times are on the horizon soon.
I think kind of on the opposite side of what Maddie said, um, what's helped me is refocusing on like my local environment and not thinking about things like so globally. Um, so for the courses that I help teach, we have these final exhibitions, which are just like community scale, and we're communicating environmental issues through art and get to connect with like hundreds, maybe 200 community members that way. And I think just like acting on a small scale during these next few years, it helps make like those immediate impacts clearer and can be really motivating, I've found.
Can I add something really quick?
Yes, of
Like,
course.
I love the note of like the community scale of it. I think like to Elisa's point about like working through the chaos, like we can't like I think a lot of the environment right now, like it can be really easy to feel like debilitated or feel like you have to stop doing things because there's so much chaos, but like that's kind of the goal is to like create chaos and uncertainty so that like and uncertainty so you feel like you can't move forward. There are a lot of skills that where you really can move forward. And I think particularly like in my role, I work with like individual campuses a lot. And there are so many people on college campuses across Virginia that like are really invested in this kind of stuff and are setting up programs for their community. And I think like connecting with the people immediately around you and like I think what my perspective oftentimes is like the biggest way you're gonna make an impact is like by your individual connections and like the people that you talk to. And so like, how can you influence the people in your most immediate community? And like, how can you reshape the way that people are thinking about these issues and engage with these issues? And like the way that like you influence and like even talk to your peers has a really big ripple effect. And so I think when there's like so much chaos at this high level, like ground yourself in the people that are immediately around you.
And Sydney just gave me compost bags, and now we're composting.
It's
my
true.
house.
She's
an influencer.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for coming. This was so awesome. I just want to reintroduce my coworker.
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Madeline Fernandez. I'm also a student marketing manager at the Office of Sustainability. Glad I could make it to hear all those wonderful insights. We will have a link to this posted on YouTube that we'll send out to everyone. Feel free to share that with people. And we did have a few upcoming announcements. So if you're really interested in what you were to say, we kind of have a follow-up. We have a sustainability summit on November 14th for the Year of the Environment. And as one of the events there, we'll feature a environmental career expo. This doesn't have exclusively like stereotypical like environmental like job opportunities and interests. It'll also have ones that relate to other fields. So it's a great way to kind of get exposed to those real world connections between environment and sustainability and a lot of other sectors. So that's kind of a little plug for that.
And then if you guys want, you can scan. Let me figure out bigger. We have a newsletter that goes out every single week, and it'll have a list of a lot of different opportunities, whether that be volunteering, job opportunities on campus, clubs that are hosting things like that. So you guys can sign up and you'll get the newsletter. And then we also have a QR code for more information about the career center. We hosted this one. So thank you guys so much for coming.
And we just want to thank all of the panelists.
Feel free. I think I'll speak for anyone. If you ever want advice or like need anything, like please feel free to reach out. Like message us on LinkedIn or like if you want to like you have my email. Like please feel free to reach out. More than happy to chat with people.
Ditto. Awesome. Thank you so much for attending. Come up to us, and if you have any more questions, I'm happy to answer them, and I'm sure
yeah.
Stick around for a little bit. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you guys. All right. Yes. Okay. I'm sorry.